I'm not sure why you made so much food, Mom. We already ate. My daughter Rebecca's words hit me like a slap across the face as I stood in her kitchen, surrounded by the home-cooked dishes I'd spent all morning preparing. Her husband, Jason, wouldn't even look at me, suddenly fascinated by something on his phone. Their children, my grandchildren, had already been whisked upstairs. The dining table was spotless, not a single place setting in sight, despite my text earlier confirming, dinner at 6. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I'm Eleanor Pierce, 67 years old, and until that moment in Rebecca's kitchen, I'd spent 40 years convincing myself that family always comes first. I'd worked as an accountant at the county tax assessor's office, not the most glamorous career, but it provided stability. My husband Frank passed away 12 years ago, leaving me to navigate life's remaining chapters alone. I lived modestly, in the same 3-bedroom ranch house where we'd raised our children, drove a sensible sedan, and kept my expenses minimal. What Rebecca and Jason didn't know, what no one knew, was that beneath my unassuming exterior, I'd been quietly building something substantial. Years of careful investing, property acquisitions, and financial discipline had turned Frank's modest life insurance payout and my steady income into something that would make their eyes widen if they knew. But as I stood there with my casserole, dish cooling in my hands, that revelation was still months away. I just thought it would be nice to have a family dinner, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's been weeks since I've seen the kids. You should have called first, Rebecca said, sighing dramatically as if my presence was an inconvenience rather than a planned visit. Jason's parents sent us meal delivery service this week. Super premium, all organic. We just finished eating. I nodded, swallowing my hurt. I did text this morning about dinner. You responded with a thumbs-up emoji. Rebecca barely glanced up from tidying an already immaculate counter. Mom, a thumbs-up doesn't mean yes. Come over with enough food to feed an army. It just means, I saw your message. Jason finally looked up from his phone, his expression a mixture of embarrassment and impatience. Eleanor, why don't you leave the food? We can have it tomorrow. The kids have homework, and Rebecca has an early client meeting to prepare for. I'd driven 40 minutes across town with warm food and a heart full of anticipation, only to be dismissed like an inconvenient delivery person. This wasn't the first time either. Since Rebecca and Jason had moved into their new house in Oakwood Estates, the prestigious neighborhood I'd quietly helped them afford, visits with my grandchildren had become increasingly restricted, always on their terms, always brief. Of course, I said, setting the dishes on the counter. I understand you're busy. What I didn't say was how much I missed the days when Rebecca would call me just to chat, when she'd bring the kids over on weekends, when my presence wasn't treated like an interruption. Something had shifted when they moved into this house 2 years ago. The larger mortgage, the country club membership, the private schools. Suddenly they were playing a social climbing game, and I, with my sensible shoes and unfashionable haircut, no longer fit the image they wanted to project. Before I go, I ventured, could I at least say goodnight to Emma and Liam? Rebecca exchanged a glance with Jason. They're already getting ready for bed, school night. It was 6:15 p.m. I nodded again, gathering my purse. Well, I'll be going. Then, enjoy the food. As I walked to my car, I felt a heaviness in my chest that had become all too familiar. When had I become an outsider in my daughter's life? When had the children I helped raise become so focused on appearances that they couldn't spare an hour for dinner with their mother? The following weekend, my phone rang. It was Rebecca, her voice honey-sweet in a way that immediately put me on alert. Mom, I hope you weren't upset about the other night. You know how crazy things get with the kids' schedules. It's fine, dear, I said, though it wasn't. I understand you're busy. Great. So listen, Jason and I were thinking about having the back patio extended before summer, and we're a little short on cash right now. His bonus got delayed, and with the kids' tuition payment coming up, I was wondering if you might be able to help out. Just a small loan. $10,000 should cover it. I nearly dropped the phone. $10,000 for a patio extension, requested so casually after being turned away at the door. This wasn't the first time they'd asked for money. There had been the down payment gift, the kitchen renovation, the luxury SUV when their perfectly functional car was only 3 years old. I'll need to check my accounts, I said, buying time. Things are a bit tight right now with property taxes coming due. Rebecca's tone instantly cooled. Mom, you live in the same house that's been paid off for decades. How tight could things be? It's not like you have many expenses. I'll see what I can do, I said, unwilling to argue. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the financial statements spread before me. The truth was, I could easily afford to give them $10,000. I could give them 100 times that amount without significantly impacting my finances. But something had shifted inside me during that rejected dinner. A lifetime of putting everyone else first had led to this moment, being seen as nothing more than a convenient ATM by my own daughter. 2 days later, I received a group text from Rebecca. Annual Oakwood Estates Spring Gala this Saturday. Dress code, formal. So excited to see everyone there. I stared at my phone, puzzled. The message had been sent to multiple people, but I'd never heard of this event. A minute later, my phone pinged again with a private message from Rebecca. Mom, meant to remove you from that group text. It's just for neighborhood residents and their guests. Sorry for the confusion. I set my phone down, a strange calm settling over me. For decades, I'd accepted being an afterthought, believed that unconditional giving was what mothers did. I'd never complained when Rebecca stopped calling, when holidays became brief visits sandwiched between more important commitments, when my grandchildren barely knew me beyond the Christmas and birthday gifts I sent. But that moment, being explicitly uninvited from a social event I'd never asked to attend, crystallized something for me. The relationship had become completely one-sided. I was good enough to provide financial assistance, but not good enough to be seen in public with them. I made a decision then. It was time for honesty, not just with Rebecca and Jason, but with myself. I picked up the phone and called my financial advisor, Thomas, who'd been helping me manage my investments for the past 15 years. Eleanor, always good to hear from you. What can I do for you today? Thomas, I think it's time for me to make some changes. I'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss restructuring some of my holdings. Of course. Is everything all right? I paused, considering the question. It will be. I've been too passive for too long. It's time I started being more transparent about my financial situation. The following week, Rebecca called again. This time, her voice had a strained quality to it. Mom, about that loan we discussed. Have you had a chance to check your accounts? I have, I said calmly. I'm afraid I won't be able to help with the patio extension. Silence on the other end, then. What do you mean you can't help? It's only $10,000. The casual way she said, only $10,000, told me everything I needed to know about how she viewed my finances. And by extension, me. I have my own expenses to consider, I said. The property taxes on my house have gone up again. This year. Rebecca scoffed. Mom, you're being ridiculous. Your house is probably worth what, $300,000? The taxes can't be that bad. Jason and I pay 5 times what you do, and we manage. I bit my tongue to keep from pointing out that I had helped with their down payment, making their mortgage payments considerably lower than they would have been otherwise. I'm sorry, Rebecca. The answer is no this time. Fine, she snapped. I guess we know where we stand with you. Don't expect an invitation to Emma's birthday party next month. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. We'll be keeping it small, just people who actually support this family. The line went dead before I could respond. I set the phone down and took a deep breath. Using my grandchildren as emotional leverage, that was a new low. But instead of the usual hurt and guilt, I felt something different stirring inside me. Resolve. The next day, I drove to the county office where I'd worked for 30 years before retiring. Many of the staff had changed, but a few familiar faces remained, including my old colleague Diane, who now served as the head of the property records department. "Eleanor, what a wonderful surprise! What brings you back to the old stomping grounds?" I smiled, sitting across from her desk. I need some information, and I thought who better to ask than the person who knows the system better than anyone. Diane beamed. "What do you need?" "I'd like to verify the property tax payment records for an address in Oakwood Estates." Her eyebrows rose slightly. "That's the fancy new development on the north side? Going house hunting?" She winked. "Something like that," I said. "The address is 427 Windsor Lane." Diane turned to her computer and began typing. "That's interesting," she said after a moment. "The property taxes on this one are paid through a business entity, not by the homeowners directly." "Which entity?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Pierce Financial Holdings, LLC." She looked up. "Wait, Pierce, isn't that your last name?" I nodded. "It is. That's my daughter's house." Understanding dawned on Diane's face. "Eleanor, do the homeowners know that you're—" "No," I said quietly. "They don't. But I think it's time they did." Diane reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. "Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for our children is to help them see reality." I left the county office with copies of the property tax, records for not just Rebecca and Jason's house, but also for the vacation cabin at Lake Mitchell they thought they were renting from a management company, and the commercial property where Jason's startup office was located, all paid through Pierce Financial Holdings, LLC. All owned, ultimately, by me. What Rebecca and Jason didn't know, what no one in my family knew, was that I hadn't just been an accountant at the tax assessor's office. I'd been studying property values, tax codes, and investment opportunities for decades. When Frank died, I'd used his life insurance to start small, buying a foreclosed duplex, renovating it, and renting it out. That led to another property, then another. I reinvested everything, living simply on my pension and Social Security. By the time Rebecca and Jason started looking in Oakwood Estates, I'd already bought 3 properties in the development as investments. When they fell in love with the house on Windsor Lane but couldn't quite afford it, I'd quietly purchased it through my LLC and worked with a property management company to create a rent-to-own arrangement with terms they could manage. Though they believed they were dealing directly with the previous owners. They never thought to question why their offer had been accepted when higher bids were on the table. The truth was, I'd been silently supporting them financially for years, but in ways that preserved their pride and independence. Or so I thought. Instead, they'd come to see me as financially insignificant, someone whose only value was occasional babysitting and emergency loans. I wasn't angry about helping them. I was angry that, despite my help, they'd still come to treat me with such dismissive disregard, that my presence in their lives had become an inconvenience rather than a joy. 3 days later, I received a text from Jason, not Rebecca. "Eleanor, Rebecca mentioned you're having money troubles. I know a guy who helps seniors with reverse mortgages. Could send you his info if helpful. No pressure." I stared at the message, a mixture of emotions washing over me. They thought I was in financial distress because I'd refused to fund their patio extension. They weren't concerned. They were condescending. I texted back, "Thank you for your concern. No need for mortgage advice. I'd love to have you, Rebecca, and the children over for dinner this Sunday at 5. I have something important to discuss. His reply came quickly. This Sunday is tough. Rebecca has yoga, kids have activities. Could do coffee sometime next week, maybe. I took a deep breath and typed, Sunday dinner is non-negotiable. It concerns your housing situation and is time-sensitive. I'll expect you at 5. There was a long pause before his response appeared. We'll be there. That Sunday, I prepared a simple meal. Nothing elaborate like the rejected dinner from weeks before. I set the dining room table with the good china, and placed 3 envelopes beside my plate. They arrived 20 minutes late. Rebecca swept in first, air kissing my cheek while simultaneously checking her watch. The children followed, eyes glued to their tablets. Jason came last, carrying a bottle of inexpensive wine that still had the discount store price tag on it. Mom, we can only stay for an hour, Rebecca announced, not bothering with a greeting. Emma has a video project due tomorrow, and we promised she could use our editing software tonight. This won't take long, I said, gesturing to the table. Please, everyone sit down. Dinner was a tense affair. Rebecca picked at her food while checking her phone under the table. Jason made awkward small talk about the weather. The children, when prompted to put their tablets away, barely spoke 3 words. After the plates were cleared, I remained seated and looked at my daughter and son-in-law. I asked you here because there's something important you need to know, I began. For the past several years, I've been living a kind of double life. That got their attention. Rebecca's head snapped up from her phone, and Jason's expression shifted from bored to concerned. What are you talking about, Mom? Are you sick? The fact that illness was her first assumption stung, but I pressed on. No, I'm perfectly healthy. What I mean is that I haven't been entirely forthcoming about my financial situation. Jason leaned forward, suddenly interested. Financial situation? I nodded, picking up the first envelope. This contains the property records for 427 Windsor Lane, your home. If you look closely, you'll see that the property was purchased by Pierce Financial Holdings, LLC. The taxes, insurance, and certain maintenance costs are all paid through this entity. Rebecca frowned, taking the envelope. I don't understand. Our mortgage is through Oakwood Community Bank. Yes, I agreed. You pay your mortgage to the bank, but the bank doesn't own the house. Pierce Financial Holdings does. What's Pierce Financial Holdings? Jason asked, his voice wary. I slid the second envelope toward them. It's a limited liability company established 12 years ago. I'm the sole owner. Silence descended on the room as they opened the second envelope, which contained the LLC's incorporation documents and a summary of assets. Jason's eyes widened as he scanned the paper. Rebecca's face went pale. Mom, this says the company owns 17 properties. That's millions in real estate. 23 properties now, I corrected gently. The list is a bit outdated, including the lake cabin you've been renting for summer vacations and the building where your office is located, Jason. Jason's mouth opened and closed wordlessly. Rebecca's expression hardened. You've been lying to us, she accused. All these years pretending to be just getting by, and you're what? Secretly rich? Why would you hide this? The irony of her outrage wasn't lost on me. I wasn't hiding anything. I simply chose to live modestly and invest wisely. The reason I'm telling you now is that I've realized our relationship has become unbalanced. Unbalanced, Rebecca repeated. Yes, you've come to see me as financially insignificant, someone who can be dismissed, ignored, uninvited from family gatherings, turned away at the door when I bring dinner. Meanwhile, you don't hesitate to ask for loans or financial assistance when it suits you. That's not fair, Rebecca protested, but her voice lacked conviction. I pushed the third envelope across the table. This contains the terms of your housing arrangement. You've been in a rent-to-own agreement, but the actual owner is my company, not the previous residents as you were led to believe. You've built some equity, but not as much as you think. Jason scanned the documents, his expression shifting from confusion to calculation. I could almost see the gears turning in his head, reassessing me from burden to asset. "So what are you saying?" he asked carefully. "Are you evicting us?" I shook my head. "No, I'm saying that things need to change. I want a real relationship with my daughter and my grandchildren, not one based on convenience or financial advantage, but on genuine connection and mutual respect." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears, but whether from shame or manipulation, I couldn't tell. "Mom, we've always loved you. If we've been busy or distracted, it's just because life gets hectic. You know that. Too busy for dinner, but not too busy to ask for $10,000 for a patio extension," I noted quietly. "Too busy for me to see my grandchildren, but not too busy to attend galas and social functions." The room fell silent again. The children looked up, sensing the tension. "So what happens now?" Jason finally asked. I straightened my shoulders, feeling strangely light. "That depends on you. I'm not asking for gratitude for financial assistance you didn't know about. But I am asking for basic respect and inclusion in your lives. Not as a checkbook or an occasional babysitter, but as a mother and grandmother who loves you and wants to be part of your family." Rebecca wiped her eyes. "I don't even know what to say. This is all so unexpected." "You don't need to say anything now," I told her. "Take some time to process. The property arrangements won't change. You're not in any danger of losing your home. But I wanted you to understand that the dismissive way you've been treating me doesn't align with the reality of our situation." As they prepared to leave, subdued and thoughtful, Rebecca paused at the door. "Mom, I'm sorry. About dinner that night. About a lot of things." I nodded, accepting but not quite forgiving yet. "Sunday dinners," I said. "Every week. Here or at your house, I don't mind which. Real family time. That's where we start." "We'll be here," she promised. And for the first time in years, I thought I detected genuine sincerity in her voice. After they left, I sat in my quiet living room, reflecting on the evening. I hadn't revealed my financial situation out of spite or to demand gratitude. I'd done it because relationships built on false perceptions and imbalanced power dynamics inevitably become toxic. Rebecca and Jason had come to see me as irrelevant because I'd allowed myself to become invisible, silently supporting them from the shadows while accepting scraps of their time and attention in return. The following Sunday, they arrived 15 minutes early. The children brought handmade cards. Rebecca had prepared a salad to accompany my meal. Jason carried a proper bottle of wine and looked me in the eye when he spoke. It wasn't perfect. Real change takes time. But as we sat around the table, engaging in actual conversation, I felt something shift. For the first time in years, I wasn't just the convenient mother or the emergency bank account. I was Eleanor Pierce, mother, grandmother, property owner, investor, worthy of a place at the table. Sometimes standing up for yourself means letting others see your true worth, not to impress them or to leverage power, but to establish authentic connections based on reality rather than convenience. In revealing my financial strength, I hadn't just reclaimed my place in my family, I'd reclaimed myself. And as Emma looked up from her plate and spontaneously asked if I'd help with her school history project, because Grandma knows about old things, I realized that while money might have opened the door to this reconciliation, it would be love, time, and mutual respect that would ultimately rebuild our family. The property taxes were just the beginning of the story. The weekly Sunday dinners continued for nearly 2 months, each one slightly less awkward than the last. Rebecca and Jason arrived punctually. The children were better behaved, and conversation flowed more naturally as the initial shock of my revelation faded. but I wasn't naive enough to believe that decades of family dynamics could be restructured over a few shared meals. The politeness felt fragile, like thin ice over deep water. One evening, as Jason helped me clear the dinner plates, he cleared his throat nervously. "Eleanor, I've been meaning to ask you something." I placed the dishes in the sink and turned to face him. "What is it, Jason?" He leaned against the counter, trying to appear casual but failing miserably. "I've been thinking about expanding my business. There's this opportunity to acquire a smaller competitor, but we'd need significant capital." He hesitated. "Given what we now know about your financial situation, I wondered if you might be interested in becoming an investor. It could be a family business." And there it was, the first attempt to leverage the new knowledge of my wealth. I'd been expecting it, though I'd hoped it wouldn't come quite so soon. "What does Rebecca think about this idea?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "She thinks it's perfect," he said eagerly. "A way to bring the family closer together through business." I doubted those were Rebecca's exact words. More likely, they'd discussed how to approach me, crafting an appeal they thought would resonate. "I appreciate you thinking of me," I said carefully. "But mixing family and business is complicated. Why don't you send me a proper business proposal? I'll have my financial advisor review it." Jason's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. "Your financial advisor? I thought this could be more informal. Family helping family." "Family helping family works when someone needs groceries or help with a car repair," I replied. "Business investments require proper evaluation and structure." He nodded stiffly. "Of course, I'll put something together." When I returned to the dining room with coffee, I noticed Rebecca studying me with new eyes, calculating, assessing. The children had gone to play in the yard, leaving just the three of us at the table. "Mom," Rebecca began, stirring sugar into her cup, "I've been thinking about your retirement. That house must be so much work for you to maintain alone. Have you ever considered selling it and moving into something more age-appropriate?" I nearly laughed at the transparency of it. Not even 2 full months of repaired relationship, and already they were eyeing my primary asset. "My house suits me perfectly," I replied. "Besides, it holds too many memories to part with." "Memories are wonderful," Rebecca pressed, "but practicality matters too. There's a lovely new senior living community near us in Oakwood. Beautiful apartments, activities, people your own age. We could visit much more often if you were closer." "How thoughtful," I said, my voice dry. "But I'm quite content where I am." Rebecca exchanged a glance with Jason before continuing. "We're just concerned about you, Mom. Living alone at your age can be dangerous. What if you fell? What if there was an emergency?" I set my coffee cup down with deliberate care. "I'm 67, Rebecca, not 97. I exercise regularly, my health is excellent, and I have a security system with emergency response features." I paused. "But your concern is noted." The conversation shifted to safer topics, but the undercurrent had been established. They wanted access to my wealth, whether through business, partnerships, property transfers, or other means. The Sunday. Dinners, the renewed interest in my life, the children's suddenly improved behavior, all of it felt calculated rather than genuine. That night after they left, I called my oldest friend, Marjorie, who had been my confidant through decades of life's ups and downs. "They're testing boundaries," she said after I explained the situation. "You've changed the power dynamic, and they're trying to figure out what it means for them." I didn't reveal my financial situation to gain power over them. I sighed. "I just wanted honest relationships." "I know that, Eleanor. But they may not see it that way. People often project their own motivations onto others. If they would use money for control, they assume you will too." Marjorie's insight struck a chord. Perhaps Rebecca and Jason couldn't conceive of a financial revelation without ulterior motives, because that's not how they operated themselves. "So what do I do?" I asked. "I don't want to cut them off again, but I can't keep pretending I don't see what's happening." "Give it time," she advised. "Keep your boundaries firm, but your heart open. Some people need longer to grow." The following week, Jason emailed me a business proposal for his company's expansion. I forwarded it to Thomas, my financial advisor, with a request for his honest assessment. His response came 2 days later. The proposal was optimistic to the point of fantasy, with projected returns that bordered on mathematical impossibility and risk factors that were either minimized or omitted entirely. When Sunday dinner came around, I approached the subject directly. "Jason, I've reviewed your business proposal," I said as we finished the main course. "I won't be investing." His fork clattered against the plate. "What? Why not?" "The projections aren't realistic, the market analysis is incomplete, and the risk assessment is inadequate," I explained calmly. "It's not a sound investment opportunity." Jason's face flushed. "With all due respect, Eleanor, I've been in this industry for 15 years. I think I understand the market dynamics better than your advisor." "Perhaps," I acknowledged, "but numbers don't lie, and these numbers don't add up." Rebecca jumped to her husband's defense. "Mom, Jason has built his business from nothing. He knows what he's doing. If you just give him a chance—" "This isn't about giving chances," I interrupted gently. "It's about making responsible financial decisions. I didn't build my portfolio by making emotional investments." "So that's it?" Jason's voice had an edge now. "You dangle your wealth in front of us and then pull back when we actually need support?" I met his gaze steadily. "I didn't dangle anything, Jason. I revealed my financial situation because I was tired of being treated as insignificant while simultaneously being expected to provide handouts. That hasn't changed." "No one's asking for handouts," Rebecca protested. "This is a legitimate business opportunity." "An opportunity I've evaluated and declined," I said firmly. "That's my right." The remainder of the evening was tense. The children, sensing the adult conflict, became unusually quiet. When they left, the goodbyes were stiff and perfunctory. I wondered if they would return the following Sunday, or if this refusal would end our tentative reconciliation. To my surprise, they did return, though Rebecca was noticeably cooler toward me. After dinner, while the children watched television in the living room, she followed me into the kitchen under the pretense of helping with dessert. "Jason's been turned down for a business loan," she said without preamble. "Your rejection made the bank nervous." I raised an eyebrow. "I doubt my private decision influenced a bank's lending practices." "You don't understand how these things work," she insisted. "In business communities, word gets around. People talk." "Did you tell people I declined to invest?" She looked away. "Jason might have mentioned it to a few colleagues. He was upset." I shook my head. "That was unwise, but my decision stands." Rebecca's expression hardened. "Fine, but there's something else we need to discuss. Emma's private school tuition is due next month, and with the business loan falling through, we're in a tight spot." The emotional whiplash was almost dizzying. One moment I was being blamed for Jason's business troubles, the next I was expected to cover their children's education costs. "Rebecca," I said carefully, "your financial planning isn't my responsibility. Emma's education is important, but you and Jason need to figure out how to manage your household budget." "Are you seriously suggesting we pull Emma out of Westfield Academy? It's the best school in the district. All her friends are there." Rebecca's voice rose sharply. "I'm suggesting you live within your means," I replied. "You have a beautiful home with reasonable payments thanks to the arrangement I facilitated. Your careers provide substantial income. If private school tuition is stretching you too thin, perhaps other expenses need reconsideration." "Rebecca, stared at me as if I'd suggested selling the children. Like what? The country club membership you barely use, the luxury car leases, the designer wardrobes, the weekly cleaning service. Those aren't luxuries, Mom. They're necessities for the life we've built. I couldn't help but laugh. Necessities? Rebecca, when you were growing up, we had one family car that your father kept running with duct tape and determination. You shared a bedroom with your brother until you were 12. We never once had a cleaning service, and you turned out just fine. That was different, she insisted. Times have changed. Human needs haven't, I countered. The distinction between wants and necessities is one every adult should understand. She crossed her arms, eyes narrowing. So that's your answer? No help with Emma's tuition? That's my answer, I confirmed. You and Jason need to make your own financial decisions without expecting me to fill the gaps. The dessert was served in strained silence. The following Sunday, they didn't show up for dinner. No call, no text, just an empty table set for 5. I ate alone, wondering if history was repeating itself, if standing firm on my boundaries meant losing my family all over again. 3 weeks passed without contact. I considered reaching out, but decided against it. This cycle of emotional manipulation needed to end, and that wouldn't happen if I chased after them each time they pulled away. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Emma, my 12-year-old granddaughter, standing on the porch, her school backpack slung over one shoulder. Emma, what are you doing here? Does your mother know where you are? She shook her head, her expression a mixture of defiance and uncertainty. I took the bus. Mom thinks I'm at debate club. I ushered her inside, concerned. You shouldn't be traveling across town alone without permission. Your parents will be worried. They're too busy fighting to notice, she said, dropping onto the sofa. They fight all the time now. I sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. Emma and I had never been particularly close. Rebecca had made sure of that. But I sensed she needed someone to listen. What are they fighting about? I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. Money, Dad's business, my school, everything. She picked at a loose thread on her sleeve. I overheard them talking about you. Dad said you were sitting on a fortune while watching them struggle. Mom said they needed to find a way to access your money before. She trailed off, looking uncomfortable. Before what, Emma? She met my eyes reluctantly. Before you change your will or give everything away to charity or something. The naked calculation of it, discussing my death and inheritance while I was very much alive, sent a chill through me. But I kept my expression neutral for Emma's sake. That must have been difficult to hear. She nodded. They don't know I heard. I was supposed to be doing homework, but I forgot my history book downstairs. She hesitated. Grandma, are you really rich? The directness of children never ceased to amaze me. I'm financially comfortable, I said carefully. I worked hard and invested wisely for many years. Then why won't you help with my school tuition? Don't you want me to get a good education? The question wasn't accusatory, just curious, perhaps confused by the adult conflict swirling around her. Of course I want that, Emma. But your parents have chosen a certain lifestyle that they need to manage responsibly. Sometimes that means making tough choices about priorities. She considered this. Dad wants to pull me out of Westfield. He says I can go to public school like normal kids. But Mom says it would be social suicide. I winced at the dramatic terminology. Public schools provide excellent education too, Emma. I went to public school. So did your mother. I know, she admitted. I actually wouldn't mind. My best friend Zoe goes to Riverside Middle, and they have a better science program anyway. I didn't even want to go to Westfield. Mom did. This revelation didn't surprise me. Rebecca had always been more concerned with appearances than substance. Have you told your parents how you feel? Emma shrugged. Mom doesn't listen when it doesn't match what she wants to hear. The accuracy of this assessment from a 12-year-old was both impressive and heartbreaking. Emma, I need to call your parents and let them know you're here. They'll be worried. Can I stay for a while first? Please? It's so quiet here. At home, it's just fighting or fake niceness when they have important people over. I nodded, recognizing the plea beneath her request. All right. How about I make us some hot chocolate, and you can tell me about this science program at Riverside that interests you? For the next hour, Emma talked more than I'd heard her speak in years, describing her interest in environmental science and robotics with genuine enthusiasm. As she spoke, I glimpsed the person emerging beneath the carefully curated exterior Rebecca had constructed for her, thoughtful, pragmatic, and surprisingly grounded. When I finally called Rebecca, her panic quickly turned to anger. She did what? How dare she take a bus across town without permission? Put her on the phone. Right now. I glanced at Emma, who was looking through a book of nature photographs I kept on the coffee table. Rebecca, she's fine. She needed some space to think. She'll be ready when you come to pick her up. I'm leaving work now. I'll be there in 30 minutes. She hung up without saying goodbye. When Rebecca arrived, her expression was thunderous. She barely acknowledged me before turning to Emma. Get in the car. We'll discuss your punishment at home. Rebecca, I said quietly, perhaps you should listen to why Emma felt she needed to come here today. Stay out of my parenting, Mom. This is between me and my daughter. Emma stood her ground, surprising both of us. I'm tired of being used as a prop in your perfect family picture. I don't even like Westfield. The kids are mean, and the teachers care more about test scores than actual learning. Rebecca looked stricken. Emma, that's not... We've given you every advantage. I didn't ask for those advantages, Emma interrupted, sounding remarkably adult. I asked for you to listen to me. Grandma listened more in 1 hour than you have all year. A flash of hurt crossed Rebecca's face, quickly replaced by defensiveness. We're leaving. Now. As they walked to the car, I noticed Emma slip something into my mailbox. After they drove away, I checked and found a folded piece of notebook paper with a phone number and a hastily scrawled note. This is my friend Zoe's number. Her mom says I can text her anytime. Thanks for listening, Grandma. The simple note brought tears to my eyes. In all the financial maneuvering and family politics, I'd almost forgotten what really mattered. Genuine connection, being truly seen and heard. The following day, I received a scathing email from Rebecca, accusing me of undermining her parental authority and turning Emma against her. The rhetoric was so overblown that I couldn't bring myself to respond immediately. Instead, I forwarded the email to Marjorie with the subject line, "Can you believe this?" Her response was characteristically blunt. She's lashing out because Emma revealed an uncomfortable truth. Don't engage with the drama. Focus on the relationship with your granddaughter. Taking Marjorie's advice, I didn't respond to Rebecca's accusations. Instead, I went to my study and began researching educational trusts. If Emma was genuinely interested in science and environmental studies, perhaps I could establish a fund specifically for those educational pursuits, accessible when she was older and could make her own choices, bypassing her parents' control. 2 days later, my doorbell rang again. This time it was Jason, looking haggard and defeated in a way I'd never seen before. May I come in? He asked, his usual confident demeanor nowhere in evidence. I stepped aside, curious about this unexpected visit. Would you like some coffee? He shook his head. I can't stay long. Rebecca doesn't know I'm here. We sat in the living room, an uncomfortable silence stretching between us until Jason finally spoke. I need to be honest with you, Eleanor. My business is in trouble, serious trouble. The expansion plans I showed you were He hesitated. They were basically a Hail Mary pass. I was hoping a significant investment would help us recover from some poor decisions I made last year. What kind of poor decisions? I asked. He ran a hand through his hair. I invested heavily in a new product line without proper market testing. It failed spectacularly. Then I tried to recover by taking on high-interest debt. He laughed bitterly. Classic mistake, right? Throwing good money after bad. I studied him, trying to determine if this confession was genuine or another attempt at manipulation. His body language suggested sincerity. Shoulders slumped, eyes downcast, none of the calculated charm he typically deployed. Why are you telling me this now, Jason? Because I'm out of options, he admitted. The bank is calling in our business loan. We have 30 days to pay or they'll seize the company assets. If that happens, I'll probably have to declare bankruptcy. And how would this bankruptcy affect your personal finances? Your home? He finally met my gaze. That's just it. Because of how the business is structured, there's significant personal liability. We could lose the house. Understanding dawned. The house that, technically, you're buying from Pierce Financial Holdings. He nodded. I didn't come to ask for money. I know you've made your position clear on that. I came to ask if, in the event of a personal bankruptcy, you would consider some kind of arrangement that would allow us to stay in the house. For the children's sake. The mention of the children wasn't subtle, but at least he was being straightforward about the situation. I appreciate your honesty, Jason. That's a start. I paused, considering my response carefully. I would never allow Emma and Liam to be homeless, regardless of you and Rebecca's financial situations. But I'm concerned about the pattern here. This isn't just about one business failure or one financial misstep. It's about a consistent refusal to live within your means and take responsibility for your choices. He nodded, staring at his hands. I know. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. When we found out about your financial situation, it felt like a get-out-of-jail-free card. Like all our problems could be solved by access to your money. He shook his head. That was wrong. I see that now. Does Rebecca see it that way? His silence was answer enough. Jason, I'm willing to help, but not with a blank check. I'd be open to restructuring the housing arrangement to make it more secure for the children. I'd also consider providing financial counseling resources for both of you. But this cycle has to end. What cycle? He asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. The cycle of living beyond your means, creating financial emergencies, and expecting others to bail you out. It's not sustainable, and it's not teaching your children healthy financial habits. He was quiet for a long moment. Rebecca won't like it. She's got a certain image of how our life should look, certain expectations. Those expectations are hurting your family's financial stability and, from what Emma tells me, your family relationships as well. Jason looked up sharply. What did Emma say? That you and Rebecca fight constantly about money. That she feels like a prop in your perfect family picture. That she'd actually prefer to attend public school where her best friend goes. He closed his eyes briefly. She never told us any of that. Did you ever ask? The question hung in the air between us. Finally, Jason stood to leave. I'll talk to Rebecca. I can't promise she'll be receptive, but I'll try. And thank you for listening, Eleanor. For what it's worth, I am sorry for how we've treated you. After he left, I called Thomas and asked him to prepare some options for restructuring the property arrangement with Jason and Rebecca. Options that would protect the children's housing stability while encouraging financial responsibility from their parents. That evening, I sent a text message to the number Emma had left me. Hello, Zoe's mother. This is Eleanor Pierce, Emma's grandmother. Emma gave me this number. I was wondering if Emma might be allowed to visit me occasionally, after school, I've recently learned about her interest in environmental science, and I have some books and resources that might interest her. The response came quickly. Ms. Pierce, this is Diana Williams, Zoe's mom. Emma talks about you all the time. She would be welcome to come to our house after school any day, and I'd be happy to drive her to your place. I've been concerned about her lately. She seems stressed by the situation at home. Having another supportive adult in her life would be wonderful. I was surprised by this message. Emma talked about me all the time, despite our limited contact? And this other mother had noticed Emma's stress at home when Rebecca seemed oblivious to it. The contrast was stark and saddening. We arranged for Emma to visit the following Thursday after school. When she arrived, her face lit up at the sight of the books I'd gathered: field guides to local flora and fauna, an illustrated encyclopedia of environmental science, and a beginner's guide to community conservation projects. These are amazing, she breathed, running her fingers along the covers. Can I really borrow them? You can have them, I told her. Consider it the start of your personal research library. She looked up, eyes wide. Really? Mom never buys me books like these. She says science books aren't decorative enough for my bedroom shelves. The comment was so absurd I almost laughed, but Emma's earnest expression stopped me. Books aren't decoration, Emma. They're doorways to new worlds and ideas. She smiled tentatively. That's what I think, too. She hesitated. Did my dad come see you? He's been acting weird since yesterday. He did, I acknowledged, seeing no reason to lie. He wanted to discuss some family matters. Is it about the money stuff? Are we going to lose our house? The directness of her question caught me off guard. You've been worried about that, haven't you? She nodded. I heard Dad on the phone with someone from the bank. He sounded scared. I sat beside her on the sofa. Emma, I want you to know something important. Whatever happens with your parents' finances, you will always have a safe place to live. I promise you that. The relief on her face was immediate and profound. What about Liam? He's only 8. He wouldn't understand if we had to move. The fact that she was more concerned about her younger brother than herself spoke volumes about her character. Liam, too, of course. Family takes care. Of family? Is that why you bought our house? To take care of us? I blinked, surprised. How did you know about that? She ducked her head. I might have looked at some of the papers you showed Mom and Dad that night. I'm good at reading upside down. Despite myself, I smiled. This child was certainly observant. Yes, that's exactly. Why? I wanted to make sure you and your brother would always have a stable home, even if I wasn't around to see it. But Mom and Dad messed it up, didn't they? The insight was startling coming from a 12-year-old. They made some financial choices that have put them in a difficult position, I said carefully. But it's not your responsibility to worry about adult problems. She fixed me with a surprisingly mature gaze. That's what adults always say, but kids know when something's wrong. Not telling us just makes it scarier. I considered her words thoughtfully. You're right, and you're clearly mature enough to understand more than you've been given credit. 4. How about this? I promise to be honest with you about things that directly affect you, like your housing situation. But the details of your parents' finances should remain their private business. Does that seem fair? She nodded, seemingly satisfied with this compromise. Can I come back next week? There's a science fair project I need to start planning, and Mom keeps saying she's too busy to help. I would love that, I told her sincerely. And I might know a thing or two about science projects. I did help your mother with hers, after all. Emma's visits became a weekly occurrence, quietly arranged through Diana Williams. I never mentioned them to Rebecca or Jason, waiting to see if Emma would tell them herself or if they would notice her new routine. It took nearly a month before Rebecca called, her voice tight with controlled anger. Why am I hearing from Emma's friend's mother that my daughter has been visiting you every Thursday for weeks? Why wasn't I informed? I sighed. Hello to you too, Rebecca. Emma gave me Diana's number and asked if she could visit. I assumed she had your permission. You know very well she didn't. You should have called me immediately. Why? I asked. Simply. Would you have allowed her to come? The silence on the other end of the line confirmed my suspicion. She's my daughter, Rebecca finally said. You had no right to arrange these visits behind my back. I didn't arrange anything. Emma did. She's 12 years old and clearly desperate for an adult in her life who listens to her interests and takes them seriously. I'm not apologizing for being that person. Rebecca's voice grew cold. These visits stop immediately. I don't want Emma getting attached to you just so you can use her to manipulate us. The accusation stung, but I kept my voice level. Is that what you think I'm doing? Using your daughter as leverage? What else would you call it? First, you reveal you've secretly owned our house all along. Then you refuse to help with Jason's business or Emma's tuition, and now you're having secret meetings with my child. It's transparent, Mom. I closed my eyes, pained by her inability, or refusal, to see beyond her own perspective. Rebecca, this isn't a game or a power play. Emma came to me because she needed someone to talk to about her interests. She's passionate about environmental science. Did you know that? Of course I know my own daughter's interests, she snapped. Then why does she feel the need to seek encouragement elsewhere? Why is she hiding her visits to me, believing you wouldn't approve? Don't you dare question my parenting, Rebecca hissed. Not when you're the one going behind my back. I took a deep breath. I think we both need to step back and consider what's best for Emma. If you're concerned about her visiting me, why don't you join her next time? See for yourself what we do during these visits. I don't have time for... She stopped herself. Fine. Next Thursday. What time? 4 o'clock. We usually have hot chocolate and talk about books or her school projects. I'll be there, she said curtly, and hung up. After the call, I wondered if I'd made a mistake in challenging Rebecca so directly. The relationship between us was already fragile, and now I'd potentially positioned myself as a competitor for Emma's affection and trust. But watching Emma flourish when given space to explore her interests had convinced me that these visits were important for her development and well-being. Thursday arrived, and with it came Emma, bubbling with excitement about a new environmental monitoring project her science teacher had mentioned. She stopped short when she saw Rebecca sitting stiffly in my living room. Mom? What are you doing here? Rebecca attempted a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I thought I'd join you today, see what you and Grandma do during these visits. Emma looked at me uncertainly. I nodded encouragingly. I invited your mother to join us. I thought she might be interested in hearing about your science fair project idea. Oh. Emma set her backpack down slowly. It's about measuring microplastics in local waterways. Probably boring for Mom. I'm sure it's not boring at all, Rebecca said, her tone artificially bright. Tell me all about it. For the next hour, I watched as Emma reluctantly explained her project idea, frequently glancing at me for reassurance. Rebecca tried to show interest, but it was clear she was uncomfortable with the easy rapport that had developed between her daughter and me. She kept steering the conversation towards school social events and Emma's violin lessons, topics she considered more appropriate for a young lady from Oakwood Estates. When Emma went to the bathroom, Rebecca turned to me. This is what you do? Talk about water pollution and dead bugs? We talk about whatever Emma wants to discuss, I replied. Usually her scientific interests, yes. Rebecca shook her head. I don't understand why she's suddenly so fixated on this environmental stuff. None of the other girls at Westfield are into science. It makes her stick out. Maybe standing out isn't such a bad thing. Emma has a genuine passion for understanding the natural world. That should be nurtured, not discouraged. It's not about discouraging her, Rebecca argued. It's about helping her fit in. Middle school is hard enough without being labeled the weird science girl. I studied my daughter, trying to see past the polished exterior to the person she'd become. Rebecca, do you remember how you used to collect insects when you were Emma's age? You had notebooks full of drawings and observations. She flushed. That was different. I grew out of it. Did you? Or were you taught that it wasn't appropriate for a young lady to be interested in such things? Rebecca's expression hardened. Don't psychoanalyze me, Mom. I know what's best for my daughter. Do you? I asked gently. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're projecting your own insecurities onto Emma, rather than seeing her for who she truly is. That's enough, Rebecca said, standing abruptly as Emma returned. Emma, gather your things. We're leaving. Emma looked crestfallen. But we just started talking about my project. We can discuss it at home, Rebecca insisted, though we all knew that wouldn't happen. As they prepared to leave, I quietly handed Emma a small package. Some field guides I thought might help with your research, I told her. Keep them at school, if that's easier. She nodded gratefully, tucking the books into her backpack while Rebecca pretended not to notice. After they left, I sat alone in my living room, contemplating the widening gulf between the daughter I'd raised and the woman she'd become. In Rebecca, I saw someone so focused on maintaining appearances that she'd lost sight of what truly mattered. Genuine connections, authentic interests, meaningful relationships. I wondered when that transformation had happened and what role I might have played in it without realizing. Had I somehow taught her that external validation was more important than internal fulfillment? Had my own focus on financial security and stability sent the unintended message that status and wealth were ultimate goals? These questions haunted me as I prepared for bed that night. I'd revealed my financial situation to establish more honest relationships with my family. But the truth had only seemed to widen the existing cracks. Jason was facing bankruptcy. Rebecca was increasingly defensive and controlling. And only Emma seemed to be finding her authentic voice. And even that was being actively discouraged. I wondered, not for the first time, if money ever truly solved relationship problems, or if it simply revealed what was already broken. The revelation about Jason's business troubles came to a head faster than any of us anticipated. On a rainy Tuesday morning, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. The voice on the other end belonged to Diana Williams, Zoe's mother. Ms. Pierce? I'm sorry to bother you, but I thought you should know that Emma is at our house. She showed up about an hour ago, quite upset. She says there was a huge fight at home this morning. I glanced at the clock, 10:15 a.m. Emma should be in school. Does Rebecca know where she is? Diana hesitated. Emma says she doesn't want her parents to know where she is right now. She asked specifically for you. Alarm bells rang in my mind. I'll be there as soon as possible. Could you text me your address? 20 minutes later, I pulled into the driveway of a modest but well-maintained home in a middle-class neighborhood, the kind of sensible, comfortable dwelling that Rebecca and Jason had deemed beneath them. Diana, a warm-faced woman with practical clothes and a no-nonsense haircut, greeted me at the door. She's in the kitchen with some hot tea, Diana said quietly. I've never seen her this shaken up. Emma sat hunched at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug, eyes red-rimmed from crying. When she saw me, something in her posture relaxed slightly. Grandma, she said in a small voice. I sat beside her, not reaching out yet, giving her space. What happened, Emma? She took a shuddering breath. Dad got a call from someone at the bank. He and Mom started fighting. Worse than ever before. Dad said we're going to lose everything. Mom kept saying he'd ruined our lives. Her voice broke. She said it was all his fault we were going to end up living like peasants. Then Dad said something about how if Grandma wasn't such a controlling witch, none of this would be happening. I winced at Jason's characterization but kept my focus on Emma. I'm sorry you had to hear all that. There's more, she whispered. Mom said she never should have married someone from his background, that she should have listened to her parents and found someone with real money, not just ambition. Emma's eyes filled with fresh tears. Dad just crumbled. He didn't even argue back. He just sat down and put his head in his hands. That's when I grabbed my backpack and left. Nobody even noticed. Diana had quietly slipped out of the kitchen, giving us privacy. I finally reached out, placing my hand gently over Emma's. None of this is your fault, I told her firmly. Adult problems are never children's responsibility. But what's going to happen to us? She asked, her voice barely audible. Where will we live? Will I have to change schools? You remember what I promised you before? That you would always have a safe place to live? I waited for her nod. That promise stands. No matter what happens with your parents' finances, you and Liam will be okay. What about Mom and Dad? The question was so innocent, so devoid of the calculation that had characterized her parents' recent interactions with me. Despite everything, Emma still cared deeply about her family's well-being. They're adults who will need to make some difficult decisions, I said carefully. But they won't be homeless, Emma. I wouldn't allow that to happen. She studied my face, seemingly reassured by what she found there. Can I stay with you today? I don't want to go back home yet. I nodded. Of course. But we need to let your parents know where you are. They must be worried sick. Emma looked doubtful. I'm not sure they've even noticed I'm gone. Either way, we need to call them. She reluctantly agreed. I stepped into the living room to make the call, thanking Diana for her help and assuring her that Emma would be with me for the rest of the day. Then I dialed Rebecca's number. It went straight to voicemail. I tried Jason next with the same result. Finally, I sent a text message to both of them. Emma is safe with me. She was upset by this morning's argument and came to find me. She'll stay with me today. Please call when you can. No immediate response came. I returned to the kitchen where Emma was finishing her tea, looking calmer but still fragile. Ready? To go? I asked gently. She nodded, gathering her backpack. Thanks for coming to get me. We spent the day at my house, keeping things quiet and low-key. I helped Emma with the homework she'd brought in her backpack. Then we worked on her science fair project proposal. She seemed to relax as the hours passed, the tension gradually easing from her shoulders. It wasn't until nearly 4:30 p.m. that my phone finally rang, Rebecca calling. Where is Emma? She demanded without preamble. I just got your text. School called hours ago saying she never showed up. She's with me, I repeated calmly. She's safe and doing her homework. Why didn't you bring her home immediately? Or at least call me right away? I did try to call you, Rebecca, both you and Jason. No one answered. She made an impatient sound. We've been dealing with a situation. I'll come get her now. Actually, I said, my voice firm, I think Emma should stay here tonight. She's quite upset about what she overheard this morning. That's not your decision to make, Rebecca snapped. No, it's not, I agreed. But Emma is 12 years old enough to have some say in where she feels safe right now, and right now, she doesn't feel safe coming home. The silence on the other end was heavy with unspoken emotions. Finally, Rebecca spoke, her voice strained. Let me talk to her. I brought the phone to Emma, who took it reluctantly. Hi, Mom. She listened for a moment, then said, I don't want to come home tonight. I want to stay with Grandma. Another pause. No, I'm not doing this to punish you. I need some space to think. Her voice grew stronger. Mom, I heard what you said to Dad, about his background, about wishing you'd married someone with real money. It was mean. I could hear Rebecca's voice rising on the other end, though I couldn't make out the words. Emma's expression hardened. Fine. Don't believe me. I know what I heard. She handed the phone back to me. She wants to talk to you again. Rebecca's voice was ice cold when I took the phone. This is completely inappropriate. You're undermining my parental authority and turning my daughter against me. That's not what's happening here, Rebecca. Emma sought refuge with a friend's family this morning because she was distressed by a fight she overheard. That family called me because Emma asked for me specifically. I'm not orchestrating some plot against you. I'm responding to a child in need. A child who is my responsibility, not yours. She's my granddaughter, I reminded her. And right now, she needs a calm environment to process what's happening. One night away isn't going to damage your relationship with her, but forcing her to come home when she's clearly not ready might. Rebecca was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted from anger to something more vulnerable. Everything's falling apart, Mom. The bank is foreclosing on Jason's business. We've got creditors calling constantly. The private school is threatening to remove the children if the tuition isn't paid by Friday. She took a shaky breath. I don't know what to do. It was the most honest she'd been with me in years. Would you and Jason be willing to come here? Tomorrow morning? We could talk through some options, all of us together. Another pause. What kind of options? Ones that might help stabilize your situation without compromising Emma and Liam's security. But I need both you and Jason to be open to significant changes. What kind of changes? Suspicion had crept back into her voice. That's a conversation. For tomorrow, I said firmly. For tonight, let Emma stay here. Get some rest, talk to Jason, and come over at 9 tomorrow morning. Liam can join us if you think that's appropriate, or he can stay with a friend. After another moment of hesitation, Rebecca agreed. 9 o'clock, we'll be there. When I hung up, Emma was watching me warily. Am I in trouble? I shook my head. No, sweetheart. Your parents are going through a difficult time, and they're not handling it as well as they could. But that's not your burden to carry. I smiled gently. Now, how about we make some dinner and then watch that nature documentary you mentioned last week? The evening passed peacefully. Emma helped me prepare a simple pasta dinner. Then we settled on the couch with bowls of ice cream to watch a fascinating program about marine ecosystems. Around 9 o'clock, Emma yawned widely. There's a guest room upstairs with fresh sheets, I told her. And I think I still have some of your mother's old pajamas in a drawer if you'd like to use those. Emma nodded gratefully. Thanks, Grandma, for everything. After she'd gone upstairs, I sat in my quiet living room, mentally preparing for tomorrow's conversation. It wouldn't be easy. Rebecca and Jason had spent years constructing a lifestyle based on appearance rather than substance, accumulating debt to maintain a facade of affluence. Dismantling that facade would require not just financial restructuring, but a fundamental shift in their values and priorities. The next morning, promptly at 9, Rebecca and Jason arrived with Liam in tow. My grandson, a sensitive 8-year-old, with his father's dark hair and his mother's searching eyes, clung to Rebecca's side, clearly unsettled by the tension in the air. Emma came downstairs when she heard their arrival, greeting her brother with a warm hug but maintaining a careful distance from her parents. Rebecca looked like she wanted to pull Emma into an embrace, but refrained, perhaps sensing her daughter's reluctance. I've made coffee, I said, gesturing toward the kitchen, and there's juice for the children. Once everyone was seated around the dining table with drinks, an awkward silence fell. Liam looked around nervously. Why don't you and Emma go into the living room and watch TV for a bit while the grown-ups talk? I suggested gently. Liam glanced at his parents for permission. Jason nodded, and the children retreated to the other room, Emma giving me a meaningful look before closing the sliding pocket doors between the rooms. So, I began once we were alone, I understand you're facing some serious financial challenges. Jason let out a bitter laugh. That's putting it mildly. The business is gone. The bank has already seized the assets. Personal bankruptcy is our only option at this point. Rebecca stared down at her coffee cup, her knuckles white around the handle. Which means we'll lose the house. Emma will have to leave Westfield Academy. We'll have to sell everything, even my grandmother's jewelry. Not necessarily, I said calmly. There are options we can consider. Jason looked up sharply. What kind of options? First, let's be clear about the current situation. Your business has failed. You have substantial personal debt. You're behind on Emma's school tuition. The mortgage, or rather, the payments on the rent-to-own agreement with Pierce Financial Holdings, are presumably also in arrears. Is that an accurate summary? They both nodded, Rebecca with obvious reluctance. Here's what I'm proposing. I continued. Pierce Financial Holdings will forgive the missed rent-to-own payments. We'll restructure the agreement to make it more affordable going forward. I'll also establish an educational trust for Emma and Liam that will cover their schooling expenses, whether they attend private or public institutions. Rebecca's head snapped up, hope flaring in her eyes. You'd do that? Yes, I said. But there are conditions. Jason's expression grew wary. What conditions? First, you need to meet with a financial counselor, one that I'll select and pay for, and develop a sustainable budget based on your actual income, not what you wish your income was. Second, you need to significantly downsize your lifestyle. The country club membership, the luxury car leases, the designer clothes, all of it needs to go. Rebecca's face flushed. You're asking us to completely change our lives. I'm asking you to live within your means, I corrected. The alternative is bankruptcy, which would force these changes upon you anyway, but with far more severe and long-lasting consequences. And the house? Jason asked. You mentioned restructuring the agreement? Yes. The monthly payments would be reduced to something more aligned with what you can realistically afford. In exchange, the ownership transfer period would be extended. Jason nodded slowly, clearly recognizing the reasonableness of this approach. Rebecca, however, wasn't as easily convinced. What about Emma's activities? Her violin lessons? Her tennis coaching? Her summer camps? Are we supposed to just cancel everything that makes her special? I sighed. Rebecca, did you ask Emma which of those activities she actually enjoys? Because from my conversations with her, she'd happily trade all of them for more time to pursue her interest in environmental science. Rebecca blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. That's just a phase. All children go through phases. Or it's a genuine passion that you've been systematically discouraging because it doesn't fit your image of what a special child should be doing. Jason cleared his throat. Eleanor's right, Becca. Emma talks about science constantly. She never mentions violin or tennis unless you bring it up first. Rebecca's eyes widened in surprise, clearly shocked that Jason had sided with me. Fine, she said stiffly. What about Liam? His private school baseball team is nationally ranked. Liam is 8 years old, I reminded her gently. I doubt he cares about national rankings. But again, these are choices for you to make as a family. The educational trust would cover their school expenses regardless of where they attend. How you allocate the rest of your budget is up to you. Jason leaned forward. This all sounds reasonable. More than reasonable, actually. But I have to ask, why are you doing this? After everything that's happened, why help us at all? The question revealed that despite everything, Jason still didn't fully understand my motivations. Because Emma and Liam deserve stability. Because despite our differences, you're still my family. And because I believe people can change when given the right motivation and support. Rebecca's eyes glistened with unshed tears. And if we refuse? If we declare bankruptcy instead? Then Pierce Financial Holdings would still need to protect its investment in the property, I said matter-of-factly. I would likely need to terminate the rent-to-own agreement and reclaim the house. But, I added, seeing the panic in her, I would never leave you homeless. I would help you find and secure an appropriate rental property elsewhere. You'd really evict us? Rebecca's voice was barely a whisper. I hope it doesn't come to that, I said sincerely. But I need you to understand that this isn't a negotiation where you can hold out for better terms. These are the options available to you right now. Accept my help with the conditions I've outlined, or face bankruptcy without that help. Either way, significant changes are coming to your lives. Jason reached for Rebecca's hand. Becca, we need to be practical here. Eleanor is offering us a lifeline when we're drowning. We'd be fools not to take it. Rebecca pulled her hand away. It feels like control, like she's using money to force us to live how she thinks we should live. I'm not forcing anything, I corrected. Bankruptcy court would impose far stricter limitations on your choices. I'm offering you a path that preserves your dignity and your children's stability. By making us beholden to you for everything, Rebecca countered. I studied. My daughter, trying to understand the source of her resistance. Is maintaining your current lifestyle worth more to you than your family's financial security? Than your children's well-being? She flinched as if I'd slapped her. Of course not. But there has to be another way. Maybe Jason could find another investor for a new business venture. Maybe my parents could help with the tuition payments temporarily. Rebecca, Jason said quietly, your parents already said no when I called them yesterday. They said it was irresponsible of us to have children in private schools we couldn't afford. This revelation seemed to puncture something in Rebecca. Her shoulders slumped, and for the first time, I saw the weight of their financial choices pressing down on her. What would people say? She murmured, almost to herself. Everyone at Oakwood would know. Emma's friends, the other mothers at the school. The opinions of others seem very important to you, I observed without judgment. More important, perhaps, than what would actually make your family happiest and healthiest. Rebecca looked up, defiance flashing in her eyes. You don't understand. Once you lose status in these circles, you can never get it back. The children would be ostracized. Or perhaps they'd find friends who value them for who they are, not what their parents can afford, I suggested. Emma already has that in Zoe. Before Rebecca could respond, the pocket doors slid open, and Emma stood there, Liam half hidden behind her. We could hear everything, she said simply. Rebecca's face paled. Emma, this is an adult conversation. It's about our lives too, Emma countered. And I want to say something. She took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. I hate Westfield Academy. I hate the violin lessons. I hate the tennis coaching. I've been telling you that for 2 years, but you never listen. Her voice trembled but remained steady. I want to go to Riverside Middle School with Zoe. They have an amazing science program and an environmental club that does actual field work at the Watershed Preserve. Rebecca stared at her daughter as if seeing her for the first time. But you're so talented with the violin. No, I'm not, Emma said flatly. I practice because you make me, but I'm not good at it, and I don't enjoy it. Ms. Abernathy only compliments me because you donate to the music department. Jason suppressed a smile at this blunt assessment, earning a glare from Rebecca. And, Liam, Emma continued, pulling her brother forward, tell Mom what you told me about baseball. Liam looked nervously between his parents before speaking in a small voice. I don't like it very much. I only play because Dad was so excited when I made the team. Jason's smile faded, replaced by a look of genuine surprise. But you never said anything. I didn't want to disappoint you, Liam said, his eyes downcast. The room fell silent as these revelations sank in. Rebecca looked shell-shocked, as if the foundations of her understanding had been completely upended. Jason appeared thoughtful, processing this new information about his children's true preferences. We don't care about living in a fancy house or having expensive things, Emma added quietly. We just want you guys to stop fighting all the time and maybe actually ask us what we want instead of deciding for us. I watched this exchange with a mixture of sadness and hope. The children had articulated what I'd been trying to convey all along, that the pursuit of status and appearance had come at the expense of genuine connection and happiness. Maybe, I suggested gently, we should include Emma and Liam in this conversation. After all, the decisions we make will affect their lives significantly. Rebecca opened her mouth as if to object, then closed it again, nodding reluctantly. All right. Come sit down, both of you. As the children settled at the table, I outlined the options again, this time in simpler terms appropriate for their understanding. Your parents have some difficult financial decisions to make. I've offered to help, but it would mean some changes to how your family lives. Like moving to a smaller house? Emma asked. Not necessarily. You might be able to stay in your current house with a different payment arrangement. But other things would need to change, like the country club membership or the brand new cars every 2 years. Liam looked up at his father. Could we still go camping sometimes? That doesn't cost much, right? Jason's expression softened. We could definitely still go camping, buddy. In fact, we might have more time for things like that. And could I switch to Riverside Middle? Emma asked, looking between her parents. Rebecca sighed. We'll discuss that possibility. What about the educational trust? Jason asked, turning back to me. How would that work exactly? I explained the basic structure I had in mind. A separate fund controlled by a trustee, me initially with provisions for successor trustees, that would pay educational expenses directly to the institutions rather than passing through Rebecca and Jason. This would ensure that regardless of your financial situation, Emma and Liam's education would be secure. So we wouldn't have any say in how that money is spent? Rebecca asked, the tension returning to her voice. You would have input on school selection within reason. The trust would be specifically for education-related expenses, tuition, books, educational materials, appropriate extracurricular activities. Not for designer clothes or luxury vacations disguised as educational experiences. Rebecca flushed, and I realized I'd hit close to the mark with that last example. I think it's a fair arrangement, Jason said quietly. More than fair. Rebecca looked at each person around the table, her husband, her children, me, and seemed to realize she was alone in her resistance. I need time to think about all this, she finally said. Of course, I agreed. But time is somewhat limited given the immediate financial pressures you're facing. How long do we have? Jason asked. I'd need your decision by the end of the week, I said. That would give us time to address the most urgent matters, like Emma's school tuition payment. Rebecca stood abruptly. We should go home and discuss this privately. She glanced at Emma. All of us, as a family. Emma looked to me, uncertainty in her eyes. I nodded reassuringly. It's okay to go home, Emma. Your parents understand how important it is to listen to your perspective now. Jason stood as well, extending his hand to me. Thank you, Eleanor. Regardless of what we decide, I appreciate your willingness to help despite everything. As they gathered their things to leave, I pulled Emma aside for a brief moment. Remember, you can call me anytime, I told her quietly. And our Thursday visits are still on unless you decide otherwise. She nodded, giving me a quick hug before following her family out the door. After they left, I sat at my dining table for a long time, thinking about the conversation and what it revealed. Rebecca's attachment to status and appearances ran deeper than I'd realized. Even facing financial ruin, she resisted changes that might diminish how others perceived her family. Jason seemed more pragmatic, more willing to adapt, but he'd clearly enabled Rebecca's status-seeking behavior for years. And the children, they'd shown more maturity and self-awareness than either of their parents, articulating their needs and preferences with remarkable clarity when finally given the chance to speak. I hoped that this crisis, painful as it was, might ultimately forge a healthier family dynamic. Sometimes it takes the threat of losing everything to recognize what truly matters. Later that evening, I received a text message from an unknown number. "Grandma, it's Emma. Mom and Dad are actually talking instead of yelling. Dad seems okay with your plan. Mom is still upset, but I think she's starting to understand we can't keep living the way we have been. Thank you for helping us. Love you." I saved the number in my contacts and replied simply, "I love you too, Emma. Everything will work out." As I prepared for bed that night, I reflected on how different this scenario was from what I'd initially imagined when I revealed my financial situation to Rebecca and Jason. I hadn't wanted power or control over their lives. I'd simply wanted honest relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial manipulation. The path to that goal had proven far more complicated than I'd anticipated, filled with unexpected revelations and painful confrontations. But for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope that we might actually find our way to something authentic, not just a performance of family harmony, but genuine connection grounded in truth. 3 days passed before I heard anything definitive from Rebecca and Jason. During that time, Emma texted me occasional updates, brief messages suggesting ongoing discussions and shifting perspectives. "Mom cried for hours last night," one text read. "Dad's making spreadsheets of our expenses," said another. "Liam asked if we could get a smaller house with a bigger backyard." I responded encouragingly but didn't press for details. This was their process to work through as a family, and I'd made my position clear. The ball was in their court now. On Friday morning, my doorbell rang. When I opened it, I found Jason standing there alone, looking tired but resolute. "May I come in?" he asked. "I'd like to talk about your offer." I gestured him inside and led the way to the kitchen, where I'd been enjoying my morning coffee. "Would you like some?" I offered, indicating the pot. He nodded gratefully. "Black, please." I haven't been sleeping much. Once we were both seated with steaming mugs, Jason took a deep breath. "We've decided to accept your help," he said. "All of it. The restructured housing agreement, the educational trust, the financial counseling. Everything." Relief washed over me. "I'm glad to hear that, Jason." "It wasn't an easy decision," he admitted. "Especially for Rebecca. He hesitated, searching for the right words. "Her identity has been so wrapped up in a certain lifestyle that the thought of giving it up feels like losing herself." I nodded, understanding better than he might have expected. Self-image can be a powerful force. "But the alternatives were worse," he continued. "Bankruptcy, eviction, pulling the kids from their schools with no plan. It would have been chaos." And after talking with Emma and Liam, really listening to them maybe for the first time, we realized we've been making decisions based on what we thought would give them the best advantages, not what would make them happiest. "That's an important realization," I said quietly. Jason stared into his coffee. "I grew up with very little. My parents worked multiple jobs just to keep food on the table. I promised myself my children would never know that kind of struggle." He looked up, his expression pained. "Somewhere along the way, I confused financial security with excessive luxury. I wanted to give them everything, and instead, I nearly cost them everything." The honesty in his self-assessment surprised me. "Where is Rebecca in all this?" "Still struggling," he admitted, "but coming around. She's agreed to meet with the financial counselor. She's even started researching Riverside Middle School's science program after Emma showed her their website." He smiled faintly. Turns out they've won state environmental science competitions 3 years running. Emma was ecstatic. And the country club membership, the luxury car leases? Jason grimaced. Those conversations are ongoing. Rebecca's agreed to give up the country club, but she's fighting to keep her car. Baby steps, I suppose. I nodded, appreciating his candor. So what's next? We need to address the most urgent issues first, he said, slipping into the practical problem-solving mode that had probably served him well in business before over-ambition led him astray. Emma's school tuition deadline is today. The mortgage, or rent-to-own payment, is due Monday, and we've got credit card minimum payments scattered throughout the month. I'll have my attorney prepare the necessary documents for the restructured housing agreement, I told him. As for the educational trust, I can expedite that through my financial advisor, but it may take a couple of weeks to formalize. In the meantime, I can advance the tuition payment directly. Jason looked uncomfortable. That's very generous. How can we be sure we're not just falling into the same pattern of dependency? The difference, I explained, is that this time, we're establishing clear structures with proper oversight. This isn't me writing blank checks. It's creating sustainable systems that benefit the children while encouraging financial responsibility from you and Rebecca. He seemed to accept this distinction. Thank you, Eleanor, for everything, including not giving up on us despite how we've treated you. His gratitude appeared genuine, but I remained cautiously optimistic. Words were easy. Sustained change was harder. I should thank you as well, I said, for being willing to face difficult truths and make necessary changes. That takes courage. After Jason left, I immediately called Thomas, my financial advisor, to set the promised mechanisms in motion. Within hours, Emma's tuition payment had been arranged, and the paperwork for both the educational trust and the restructured housing agreement was being prepared. That evening, a text arrived from Rebecca, the first direct communication she'd initiated since our family meeting. Mom, is your invitation for Sunday dinner still open? We'd like to come. I replied immediately, of course, 5 p.m. as usual. Sunday arrived bright and clear, a perfect early autumn day with crisp air and golden light filtering through the changing leaves. I prepared a simple meal, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, and apple pie for dessert. Comfort food that reminded me of the family dinners we'd had when Rebecca was growing up. They arrived on time, all 4 of them, with fewer signs of tension than I'd seen in months. Rebecca carried a bouquet of mixed fall flowers, which she handed to me somewhat stiffly. These are lovely, I said, genuinely touched by the gesture. Emma helped pick them out, she replied. She said you once mentioned liking dahlias. The fact that Emma had remembered such a small detail, and that Rebecca had acted on it, felt significant somehow. A tiny bridge being extended across the chasm that had formed between us. Dinner proceeded with surprisingly comfortable conversation. Liam chatted excitedly about a new friend he'd made at school who lived just 2 blocks from their house. His mom says I can come over to play any time, he explained. They have a treehouse. That sounds wonderful, I said, smiling at his enthusiasm. Maybe you could invite him to your house sometime, too. That's actually something we wanted to discuss, Jason interjected, glancing at Rebecca. We've been talking about making some changes to the house, not just cosmetic renovations, but rethinking how we use the space. Rebecca nodded. The formal dining room that we never use, the media room that's basically just for show. They're wasted space. We're thinking of converting the dining room into a study area for the kids, and turning the media room into something more practical. Like what? I asked, curious about this unexpected development. A playroom for Liam, she said. And maybe a small science workspace for Emma. She needs somewhere to store her collections and work on projects. Emma looked up from her plate, eyes wide with surprise. Really? You mean it? Really, Rebecca confirmed, a hint of a smile touching her lips. We can start planning it next weekend if you'd like. This practical acknowledgement of the children's actual interests rather than Rebecca's aspirations for them marked a significant shift in her approach. I caught Jason's eye across the table, and he gave me a subtle nod of confirmation. Yes, this change was real. After dinner, while the children helped clear the table, Rebecca asked if we could speak privately. We stepped out onto the back porch, where the evening air had turned cool enough to require sweaters. "I owe you an apology," she began, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "Several apologies, actually." I waited, giving her space to continue at her own pace. "I've been difficult, ungrateful, dismissive of your feelings and your place in our family." She wrapped her sweater more tightly around herself. "When you revealed your financial situation, I felt betrayed somehow, like you'd been keeping secrets. But the truth is, I never bothered to ask. I just assumed." "We all make assumptions," I said neutrally. "Mine were particularly self-serving," she admitted. "I saw what I wanted to see. A mother with limited means who could be easily dismissed when inconvenient but called upon when needed." She looked at me directly. "I'm embarrassed by how I've behaved." The raw honesty of her words caught me off guard. This wasn't the carefully calculated contrition I'd half expected, designed to secure my financial assistance. This felt like genuine self-reflection. "What changed?" I asked. Rebecca was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "Emma, mostly. Watching her these past few months, seeing how she lights up when she talks about her interests, how much more confident she is when she feels heard. It made me realize what I've been doing to her is exactly what my mother did to me." This was an unexpected direction. Rebecca rarely spoke about her relationship with her own mother. "In what way?" "My mother had very specific ideas about who I should be, how I should behave, what would make me successful in her eyes. Nothing I did on my own initiative was ever valued." She shook her head. "I promised myself I'd never be that kind of mother, but somehow I've become exactly that, imposing my vision on Emma without considering who she actually is." "Recognition is the first step toward change," I offered. "I hope so." She looked out over the darkening yard. The financial situation forced us to really look at our priorities. Jason and I spent hours going through our expenses, asking ourselves what actually matters to us, what brings real joy versus what just looks impressive to others. She laughed softly, though there was little humor in it. It was illuminating. "In what way?" "We discovered we've been spending thousands every month on things neither of us particularly enjoys. The country club where we barely go. The luxury cars we drive only to impress people we don't even like. The endless cycle of designer clothes that sit in closets with tags still attached." She shook her head. "Meanwhile, the things that actually make us happy as a family, game nights, weekend hikes, cooking together, cost almost nothing." This level of insight suggested their conversations had gone deeper than just practical financial planning. That's a powerful realization. "It is," she agreed. "And a humbling one." She turned to face me fully. "I'm not saying everything is magically fixed. I still struggle with what others will think. I still worry about status and perception, more than I should. But I'm trying to be honest with myself about it now, instead of just reacting on autopilot." "That's all any of us can do," I said. "Recognize our patterns and work to change them. One choice at a time." Rebecca nodded, then hesitated. "There's something else I wanted to ask you about. The educational trust you're setting up for the children." I tensed slightly, wondering if this was leading back to the financial negotiations I'd hoped we were moving beyond. "Yes?" "I was wondering if we could build in some flexibility," she said, surprising me again. "Emma is clearly headed towards something in environmental science, but Liam is still discovering his interests. I'd like to make sure the trust can support whatever path he chooses, even if it's not traditional academics." This was not the direction I'd expected. What did you have in mind? He might want to pursue trades or arts or something else entirely. I don't want him to feel pressured into a conventional educational path if that's not right for him. I studied my daughter in the fading light, trying to reconcile this thoughtful consideration of Liam's individuality with the status-obsessed woman who had dismissed my dinner invitation just months ago. People could change, I reminded myself. Sometimes crisis was the catalyst they needed. That's actually a wonderful suggestion, I told her. I'll speak with my advisors about structuring the trust to accommodate various educational and vocational pathways. She smiled, a genuine expression that reached her eyes. Thank you. For everything, Mom. For helping us. For not giving up on us. And especially for being there for Emma when she needed someone to really see her. We rejoined the others inside, where Jason and the children were engaged in a spirited board game at the kitchen table. The scene struck me as both ordinary and extraordinary, a simple family moment that somehow represented something much more profound. For the first time in years, there was no undercurrent of tension, no careful performance of familial harmony. Just four people enjoying each other's company, laughing over plastic game pieces and silly challenges. As the evening wound down and they prepared to leave, Emma hung back, waiting until her parents and brother had stepped outside before turning to me. Things are different at home, she said quietly. Better. Dad's actually listening to me about my science projects. Mom's still Mom, but she's trying. I'm glad to hear that, I told her sincerely. It's because of you, Emma continued. Standing up to them about the money stuff made them rethink everything. I shook my head. It wasn't just about the money, Emma. It was about being honest about who we are and what we really need from each other. Sometimes people get so caught up in appearances that they forget what actually matters. She nodded thoughtfully. Mom told me she's sorry for pushing me into activities I hate. She said we could look at transferring to Riverside for the spring semester if that's still what I want. And is it? Emma considered this. I think so. But I also kind of want to finish the year at Westfield now that I don't have to pretend to be someone I'm not. I joined the ecology club, and we're doing this cool project on urban wildlife corridors. Her newfound confidence was remarkable. Just weeks ago, she'd been a child trying desperately to please parents who weren't really seeing her. Now she was making thoughtful decisions based on her own interests and needs. Whatever you decide, I'll support you, I assured her. And our Thursday afternoons are still on the calendar whenever you want them. She surprised me with a quick, fierce hug before darting out to join her family in the car. The following weeks brought a steady rhythm of change and adjustment. Jason secured a position with a former business associate, not as a CEO this time, but as a senior manager with a stable salary and reasonable hours. Rebecca, after initial resistance, embraced the role of family budget manager with unexpected enthusiasm, finding creative ways to reduce expenses without sacrificing quality of life. The educational trust was established, structured exactly as we'd discussed, with flexibility to support both traditional and non-traditional educational paths. The housing agreement was renegotiated, with monthly payments reduced to a level that aligned with their actual income rather than their aspirational lifestyle. Perhaps most significantly, they began attending weekly sessions with the financial counselor I'd recommended, not just to address their immediate financial issues, but to explore the deeper patterns and emotional triggers that had led to their unsustainable choices. Emma continued at Westfield Academy through the fall semester, but preparations were being made for her transfer to Riverside Middle School in January. To my surprise, Rebecca had become actively involved in researching the science program and had even volunteered to help with the spring environmental field studies. Liam, freed from the pressure of competitive baseball, discovered an interest in community theater after a school field trip to a local production. Jason, rather than dismissing this as impractical, began taking him to weekend workshops at the Community Arts Center. Our Sunday dinners continued, alternating between my house and theirs, with an ease and authenticity that had been missing for years. Sometimes we cooked together, other times we ordered pizza and played board games. The focus was no longer on creating an impressive presentation, but on genuinely enjoying each other's company. One Thursday afternoon in late November, as Emma and I were reviewing her latest water quality testing results from a nearby stream, she asked me a question that caught me off guard. "Grandma, were you ever worried you might lose all your money?" I set down my reading glasses, considering her question. When I first started investing, yes. It felt risky, and I wasn't always confident in my decisions. But I educated myself, sought good advice, and tried to make thoughtful choices rather than emotional ones. She nodded, absorbing this. Mom says she used to think money was just for buying stuff and impressing people. But now she says it's really about security and choices. That's a very mature perspective, I noted, pleasantly surprised by Rebecca's evolving viewpoint. Yeah, she and Dad still argue sometimes, but it's different now. More like they're trying to solve problems together instead of blaming each other. Emma traced the edge of her notebook thoughtfully. Mom actually apologized to me the other day. She said she was sorry for trying to make me be someone I'm not. The significance of this wasn't lost on me. Rebecca apologizing to her daughter represented a fundamental shift in their relationship dynamic, an acknowledgement of Emma as an individual with her own valid preferences and perspectives. "How did that make you feel?" I asked. "Weird at first," Emma admitted, "but good, like she finally sees me." She looked up, her expression earnest. "I'm glad you stood up to them about the money, but I'm even more glad you stood up for me." This simple statement encapsulated what had truly been at stake all along. The financial issues, while serious, had been symptomatic of deeper problems. Family system built on appearance rather than authenticity, on external validation rather than internal values. The weekend before Thanksgiving, Rebecca called and asked if she could stop by alone. When she arrived, she seemed nervous, fidgeting with her purse strap in a way that reminded me of her as a teenager. "I have something to show you," she said, once we'd settled in the living room. She pulled out a folder and handed it to me. "It's a budget for Thanksgiving dinner. I thought maybe we could host this year. Nothing extravagant, just family, good food, and maybe some board games afterward." I opened the folder to find a meticulously planned menu with accompanying cost estimates, shopping lists, and preparation timelines. The care and consideration that had gone into it was evident. "This looks wonderful," I said sincerely. "You've thought of everything." The old me would have insisted on catering, rented china, and probably hired a photographer, she said with a self-deprecating smile. "This feels more real." "It does," I agreed, "and much more meaningful." She hesitated, then added, "I was thinking we might invite Marjorie too. You've mentioned her often, but I've never really made an effort to get to know your friends." The inclusion of my oldest friend in her family planning touched me deeply. It represented a recognition of me as a whole person with relationships and connections outside my role as mother and grandmother. "She'd love that," I said, working to keep my voice steady. "She's always enjoyed cooking. Perhaps she could bring her famous cranberry relish." Rebecca nodded, looking pleased. "Perfect. And maybe after dinner we could all go through some old photo albums? Emma's been asking about when you were younger, what our family was like before." This suggested a desire to connect with family, history, to understand the foundations that had shaped us all. Another departure from Rebecca's previous dismissal of anything that didn't directly enhance her curated image of success. As she continued outlining her ideas for the holiday, I found myself reflecting on the extraordinary journey we'd taken over the past several months. What had begun as a painful confrontation about money and respect had evolved into something far more profound, a recalibration of values, a rediscovery of authentic connection, a rekindling of family bonds based on truth rather than pretense. The financial revelation that had prompted this transformation, my disclosure of property ownership and investments, had been necessary but insufficient on its own. The real change had come from the conversations that followed, the hard truths acknowledged, the painful patterns disrupted. Rebecca was still talking, animated now as she described the pumpkin pie recipe she wanted to try, when Emma texted me. "Dad says to tell you we're thinking of scaling back Christmas this year. Fewer presents, more experiences, maybe a family trip to the science museum instead of more stuff. Isn't that awesome?" I smiled as I read the message, then returned my attention to Rebecca, who was now discussing place settings with an enthusiasm I hadn't seen her direct toward anything so ordinary in years. "That sounds perfect," I told her, responding both to her table planning and to the larger transformation her family was undergoing. Absolutely perfect. The Sunday before Thanksgiving, we gathered at my house for our regular dinner. As we sat around the table, Jason raised his glass in an impromptu toast. "To family," he said simply. The real thing, not the picture-perfect version. We all raised our glasses, even the children with their apple juice, and repeated, "To family." In that moment, looking at these people who had journeyed from estrangement to reconnection, from superficiality to authenticity, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. The path hadn't been easy or straightforward. There had been painful confrontations, resistance, backsliding, and uncertainty. But we had persevered, discovering along the way that true family bonds weren't built on financial transactions or carefully maintained appearances. They were built on honesty, respect, and the courage to see and accept each other as we truly were, flawed, evolving, and worthy of love. As Emma launched into an enthusiastic description of her latest science project, with Rebecca listening, attentively and asking thoughtful questions, I caught Jason's eye across the table. He gave me a small, knowing smile, acknowledgement of how far we'd come and the work still ahead. The journey wasn't over. Rebecca would likely struggle with status concerns for years to come. Jason would need to rebuild his professional identity without the trappings of entrepreneurial success he'd relied on. The children would face their own challenges as they navigated changing schools and social circles, but for the first time, I felt confident that they were building their lives on a foundation of authentic values rather than external appearances. And that made all the difference. Later that evening, as they were preparing to leave, Rebecca hung back, just as Emma had done weeks earlier. "Mom," she said quietly, "I've been thinking about those property tax bills you've been paying all this time." I braced myself, unsure where this was heading. "I want to start contributing," she continued. "Not the full amount, we're not there yet financially, but something, even if it's just a portion. It feels important to me to be participating in our own housing costs rather than just accepting your help." The symbolism of this offer wasn't lost on me. It wasn't about the money itself, which I didn't need, but about reclaiming responsibility, about transitioning from dependency to partnership. "I think that's a wonderful idea," I told her. "We can work it into the new agreement." She nodded, satisfied. "Good. And Mom? Thank you for not giving up on us, even when we probably deserved it." As their car pulled away from the curb, I stood in the doorway, watching until the taillights disappeared around the corner. Then I returned to my quiet living room, settled into my favorite chair, and opened the book I'd been reading before their arrival. But my thoughts kept drifting back to the family dinner we'd just shared. Not the tense, performative gatherings of the past, but something genuine and nurturing. I thought about Emma's growing confidence, Liam's newfound enthusiasm for theater, Jason's humbled pragmatism, and Rebecca's evolving perspective on what truly constituted success and fulfillment. The revelation about property taxes had indeed changed everything, not because of the money itself, but because it had forced us all to confront the dishonesty and imbalance that had infected our relationships. In that confrontation, painful as it had been, we'd found a path toward something more authentic. Sometimes, I reflected, the most valuable inheritance we can pass on isn't financial wealth at all, but the courage to live truthfully, to honor our own needs while respecting others, to build connections based on genuine care rather than convenience or obligation. That legacy, unlike property or investments, couldn't be measured on a balance sheet, but its value was beyond calculation. Thanksgiving arrived with a crisp chill in the air and golden sunlight streaming through Rebecca and Jason's windows. I arrived early at their invitation, carrying only a bottle of sparkling cider and a small bouquet of fall flowers, a stark contrast to previous years when I'd felt obligated to bring elaborate dishes and expensive gifts to justify my presence. Rebecca greeted me at the door, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a casual ponytail rather than the elaborate styling she'd once considered essential for any family gathering. The house smelled wonderfully of roasting, turkey, and fresh-baked bread. "Mom, perfect timing," she said, ushering me inside. "Emma's just about to start the mashed potatoes and could use some guidance. She insists you have a secret technique." I smiled, recalling a conversation from one of our Thursday afternoons. Just a touch of sour cream and plenty of butter. Nothing revolutionary. The kitchen was a hub of organized chaos. Emma at the counter peeling potatoes, Liam carefully arranging rolls in a basket, Jason managing multiple pots on the stove. No catering staff, no rented serving pieces, no artificial floral arrangements imported from exclusive boutiques, just a family preparing a meal together. "Grandma," Emma called out, waving a potato peeler in greeting. "Come show me how to make them fluffy like yours." As I joined her at the counter, I couldn't help but notice the changes throughout the house. The formal dining room had indeed been transformed into a study area, with two simple desks facing the windows and bookshelves, lining the walls. The pretentious art pieces that had once dominated the space had been replaced by the children's framed artwork and science fair certificates. The kitchen itself felt different too. The expensive, barely used copper cookware had given way to practical, well-loved pots and pans. Refrigerator magnets held children's drawings and family schedules rather than remaining a pristine stainless steel surface too perfect to mar with actual life. Marjorie arrived shortly after, bringing her famous cranberry relish and a warmth that immediately put everyone at ease. She'd been my steadfast friend through decades of life's ups and downs, and watching her integrate so naturally into this family gathering filled me with quiet joy. "Eleanor tells me you've been helping Emma with her science projects," Marjorie said to Rebecca as they arranged serving dishes on the counter. "Sounds fascinating." Rebecca nodded, a genuine smile lighting her face. "I've learned more about watershed ecosystems in the past month than I ever thought possible. Emma's enthusiasm is contagious. Mom's coming on our field trip to the nature preserve next week," Emma chimed in. "She's going to help document the migratory bird patterns." The casual way Emma stated this, as if Rebecca's involvement in her scientific interests was now simply expected rather than surprising, spoke volumes about how their relationship had evolved. Jason appeared in the doorway, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "Turkey's resting. Shall we move to the table?" What followed was perhaps the most relaxed, genuine family meal I could remember in decades. We passed dishes family style, complimented the cooks, and engaged in conversations that ranged from Liam's upcoming theater debut to Jason's new workplace challenges to Emma's science fair preparations. Rebecca, once so concerned with maintaining perfect appearances, laughed openly when she spilled gravy on the tablecloth. "Remember when I would have had a meltdown over this?" she asked, dabbing at the spill with a napkin. "Like the time you dropped red wine on my new cream-colored rug, Jason?" He groaned dramatically. "How could I forget? You didn't speak to me for 2 days. I was insufferable," she admitted with remarkable self-awareness. So focused on things instead of people. After dinner, instead of rushing to clear the table and present a perfect dessert display as she might have once done, Rebecca suggested we all take a break before pie. "Let's go for a short walk around the neighborhood," she proposed. Work. Up an appetite for dessert. The November air was brisk but invigorating as we strolled along leaf-strewn sidewalks. I found myself walking between Emma and Liam, listening as they pointed out neighborhood landmarks with the unfiltered enthusiasm of children. "That's Mr. Wilson's house. He has the best Halloween decorations every year," Liam informed me, pointing to a modest ranch-style home with a meticulously maintained garden. "And that's where Zoe lives," Emma added, indicating another house a few doors down. "Her mom drives us to science club on Tuesdays." These casual references to neighbors and routines revealed a family becoming more integrated into their actual community rather than striving for acceptance in exclusive social circles. It was a subtle but significant shift. Rebecca and Jason walked ahead of us, heads bent in conversation, occasionally reaching for each other's hands in a gesture that seemed both natural and newly rediscovered. Marjorie fell into step beside me, giving me a knowing smile. "You did good, Eleanor," she said quietly. "This family has found its way back to what matters." "They did the hard work themselves," I replied. "I just created the conditions for change." "Sometimes that's the most important part," she observed, "knowing when to push and when to step back." When we returned to the house, rosy-cheeked from the cool air, Liam suggested looking at the family photos Rebecca had mentioned. Jason retrieved several albums from the hall closet. Some I recognized, others created before I'd been invited, back into their lives. We gathered in the living room, passing albums back and forth, laughing at outdated fashions and reminiscing about forgotten moments. Emma was particularly fascinated by pictures of Rebecca as a child. "Mom, you collected." "Bugs too," she exclaimed, pointing to a photo of 10-year-old Rebecca proudly displaying a homemade insect collection. "You never told me that." Rebecca looked slightly embarrassed. "I'd forgotten about that phase. My mother wasn't exactly supportive of it." "Is that why you discouraged my interest in science?" Emma asked with the directness only children can manage. Rebecca considered this thoughtfully. "Probably, at least partly. We sometimes repeat patterns without realizing it." She put her arm around Emma's shoulders. "I'm trying to do better." This simple acknowledgement of past mistakes and present efforts to change represented enormous growth. The Rebecca of 6 months ago would have deflected or changed the subject rather than admitting any parental imperfection. As the evening wound down, Jason brought out a board game that had us all laughing as we competed to build ridiculous fictional creatures with evolutionary advantages. The casual fun of it, no pretense, no status signaling, just genuine enjoyment of each other's company, felt like the most precious gift. When it was time for me to leave, Rebecca walked me to the door. "This was nice," she said simply. "Really nice." "It was," I agreed. "The best Thanksgiving I can remember in years." She hesitated, then added, "We're scaling back Christmas too. Fewer presents, more presents, as the mindfulness journals would say." She rolled her eyes at her own use of the cliché, but continued, "We're thinking of taking a family trip to the mountain cabin between Christmas and New Year's. Would you consider joining us? It's nothing fancy. Just hiking, board games, and probably too much hot chocolate." The invitation touched me deeply, not just for the inclusion it represented, but for what it revealed about Rebecca's evolving priorities. The old Rebecca would never have suggested a holiday at a rustic cabin when luxury resorts were available, to impress social media followers. "I'd love that," I told her sincerely. "Good." She smiled, then surprised me with a genuine hug. Not the perfunctory air kiss she'd once considered appropriate, but a real embrace. "Happy Thanksgiving, Mom." Winter settled in, bringing with it the usual holiday bustle but with a noticeably different tone in our family dynamics. Emma transferred to Riverside Middle School after the winter break, thriving in its well-regarded science program and forming genuine friendships based on shared interests rather than social status. Liam landed a small role in the community theater's production of A Christmas Carol, revealing a natural talent for performance that delighted him and surprised his parents. Rebecca and Jason continued their financial counseling sessions, gradually implementing systems that allowed them to live comfortably within their means without the constant stress of overextension. The luxury car leases were not renewed. Instead, they purchased reliable, practical vehicles outright. The designer clothes budget was redirected to family experiences and educational opportunities. Most significantly, they began contributing to their own property taxes as Rebecca had proposed, a symbolic but meaningful step toward responsible ownership rather than dependent occupation. Our Sunday dinners continued, alternating between homes with an ease that made them feel less like obligations and more like genuine family gatherings. Occasionally, other guests joined us: Marjorie, Diana, and Zoe, colleagues from Jason's new workplace, teachers from the children's schools. The circle widened naturally as performative exclusivity gave way to authentic hospitality. The Christmas mountain cabin trip proved to be a revelation. For 5 days, we hiked snow-covered trails, played board games by the fireplace, and engaged in conversations that ranged from profound to silly. Without the pressure of maintaining appearances or impressing observers, each family member seemed to relax into their authentic selves. One evening, as Rebecca and I stood on the cabin's porch watching the children build snow forts in the yard below, she turned to me with unexpected solemnity. "I want to thank you," she said. "For what specifically?" I asked, curious about which aspect of our journey together she was referencing. "For the intervention about the property taxes," she replied. "As difficult as it was at the time, it forced us to confront realities we'd been avoiding for years." I nodded, acknowledging the truth in this. "It wasn't easy for any of us." "No," she agreed, "but necessary. We were living a life built on appearances rather than values, and it was making us all miserable, even though we couldn't admit it." She gestured toward Emma and Liam, now engaged in a good-natured snowball fight with Jason. "They deserve better than what we were modeling, equating worth with wealth, status with success." "You're giving them that better model now," I observed. She smiled, a genuine expression that reached her eyes. "We're trying. Some days are easier than others. I still catch myself worrying about what others think more than I should." "Change isn't linear," I reminded her. "What matters is the direction, not the occasional detour." As winter gave way to spring, the changes in our family dynamics continued to deepen and solidify. Emma's environmental science team qualified for the state competition. Liam discovered a passion for storytelling that complemented his theatrical interests. Jason found unexpected satisfaction in his less prestigious but more stable role, particularly enjoying the regular hours that allowed him to coach Liam's community baseball team. Rebecca perhaps showed the most profound transformation. She began volunteering at a local community center, teaching financial literacy basics to single parents, sharing with gentle humor the lessons she'd learned from her own mistakes. She traded her exclusive social circle for genuine friendships based on shared values rather than shared status symbols. The educational trust I'd established for Emma and Liam operated smoothly in the background, providing security without enabling dependency. Their parents' evolving financial responsibility meant the trust could focus on enrichment opportunities rather than basic needs: special science camps for Emma, theater workshops for Liam, educational travel experiences for both. 1 year after the property tax revelation that had catalyzed so much change, I hosted a special dinner at my home. As we gathered around the table, Rebecca and Jason, Emma and Liam, Marjorie, Diana and Zoe, I proposed a toast. "To truth," I said simply, raising my glass, "and to the courage to face it, even when it's uncomfortable." Everyone raised their glasses in response, but it was Emma who added the perfect coda. And to family, the real kind, not the pretend kind. As laughter and conversation flowed around the table, I reflected on the journey we'd taken together. The revelation about property taxes had indeed changed everything, not because of the financial implications themselves, but because it had forced a reckoning with deeper truths about value, worth, authenticity, and connection. In exposing the financial reality, we had discovered something far more valuable than money: the capacity to see ourselves and each other clearly, to acknowledge our mistakes and limitations, to grow beyond artificial constraints, to build relationships based on truth rather than convenience or appearance. That, I realized, was the real inheritance I would leave my family. Not properties or investments or trusts, but the example of authenticity and the courage to stand in one's truth, even when doing so disrupts comfortable illusions. As dinner gave way to dessert and formal conversation evolved into casual interaction, I watched my family with quiet satisfaction. The healing wasn't perfect or complete. Real families never achieve that idealized state. But it was genuine and ongoing, a process of becoming rather than a fixed destination. And that, I decided, was more than enough. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.